Hi, I'm Karen. We're here at Montavilla Sewing Center, and today we're talking about the Janome HD-3000. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make buttonholes. So right now it's set up, well, it was set up for straight stitching, but we're going to change it over to buttonhole. So move your little knob this way until the red is right under buttonhole right there. Okay, and this means that once you're done with one buttonhole, you want to move it away from that to the next one over and then back, and that resets it to the beginning of the buttonhole cycle. So that's what that means. Next, we need to move the stitch width over because there's a width to that buttonhole, and you can have it a little bit narrow, like 5, but I like to have it all the way up to 6, just so I get a nice firm buttonhole. And then we want to move this indicator right over to here where it says buttonhole. Now you can start out right in the middle, but if you have it closer to 0, it's going to make a denser stitch, and further away from 0, it's going to make a longer stitch, or less dense stitch. Okay, also, if your buttonhole, you should always stitch out a practice buttonhole just to make sure, see what it looks like, see if you need to make any adjustments. So right here, I stitched out a real short buttonhole, and notice that it's a little bit more dense on one side than on the other. That's what this little dial is for on the side here, and you can use like a coin to move that. Now I moved it up towards the plus a little bit more, but that way I can get the sides of my buttonhole a little bit more even. Now, I like to have my buttonhole a little bit denser, not too dense. You don't want to have it so that the stitches are basically stitching in place, but a little more dense. Also, normally when I sew a buttonhole, I'm going to be using the same color of thread as fabric. But for educational purposes today, I'm using a contrast. And then when you sew a buttonhole on fabric, make sure you have something like interfacing in between the layers. That's important to help the buttonhole feed correctly as you're sewing it, and also it makes it stronger around the buttonhole. Then when you go to mark your fabric, I like this marking pen. This is the friction erasable marking pen. It erases with friction, and that's how this eraser works, or if you use a hot iron. What it actually does is it changes the ink to a pale white, and that's how it erases. So it works well on pastels or white fabrics. You only need to mark the center line and then the beginning. Now look up here at this buttonhole. It shows you which part of the buttonhole is going to be sewn and in what order. So it's going to start there. The buttonhole is going to form towards the back. Next, we get out our buttonhole foot. This is what it looks like. There's little grippers here to help keep the layers together. Now, this is the buttonhole foot R, and it talks about that right up in here, right there. Okay, so pull this open like this. The button that you're using on your garment, put that right in there and then close that down. That has now determined this distance, which is going to let your machine know how long to make the buttonhole. So we're going to take the foot off of here. This is the 8th foot. I'm going to put that right up there. And then I'm going to put this on here. It might help to lift up your presser foot a little bit higher. Make sure that's down there like that. Now this, it needs to be this way. Don't have it going backwards because you need to have some place for that needle to go through. I'm going to take a single stitch like this for the purpose of getting my thread through there. You can also poke it through there, but I like this way method because it's a little bit easier. Then you want to make sure to pull down the buttonhole lever. There's this little lever that's behind the threader. It's right up in there, and it has a picture of a buttonhole on it, so that's important. This lever is going to tell the machine when to stop and do the other side of the buttonhole and do the bar tacks. So I'm going to put my interfacing back in here. I just kind of rough cut it here. There we go. All right. Slide that under there. And if you need to, lift up your presser foot. It gives you a nice extra lift. So you can lift it up a little bit higher. And that longitudinal line needs to be right in the middle of the buttonhole and the buttonhole foot opening. And the short bar tack line needs to be just like about 1 millimeter or so in front of the opening there. And then also make sure that you have the edge of your fabric parallel with the edge of your foot, and that'll make sure your buttonhole is parallel to the edge of the fabric. Okay, now I did take an extra stitch and I'm going to just reset it. There we go. Now have your thread tails off to one side when you start and hang on to them a little bit for the first couple of stitches. And it makes a bar tack first, and then it starts sewing on one side. And see, that buttonhole lever is pushed by those flanges there, and that tells it when to stop, or when to stop and do the bar tack and do the other side. Now at the end here, it's not going to automatically stop, so take a couple stitches into that final bar tack, and then you're done when you roll your hand wheel and your take-up lever is up there. At this point, if you want to make another buttonhole, switch it away to the stitch number 1, and see how it made that extra noise? And that means it's reset back to the beginning of that cycle. Now what I like to do, since these threads, these ending threads are going to need to be tied, I like to cut off the beginning threads so they're out of my way. Then I cut off the ending threads. Another adjustment that you might want to make is with your needle thread tension. If you don't want any of your bobbin thread to show, and that's how I fixed this up here, I loosened my top thread tension so that way the bobbin thread is a little bit tighter. Then we pull our thread tails through here. There we go. And we tie this off. Just like in a nice little square knot, that's all you really need to do. And once you have that tied, then those stitches are not going to come undone. I'm going to just leave that there for now. And then at this point is where we take and cut the buttonhole open. Now, it is helpful to have a pin right at the end of the bar tack, just inside the bar tack so you don't accidentally cut all the way through. Start at the end, go towards there, and it does help me to just turn it over and reset that pin. See, I've already cut it that far. Start at this end. Be careful not to cut your stitches. There we go. And then I'm going to take the button out of the foot there because this is my practice buttonhole, and I want to make sure that the button fits through the hole there. Also, these extra threads there, you want to get rid of all that because the button could be accidentally buttoned through there. Plus, if you trim it all off, it's nice and neat looking, and I like to have my sewing look nice and neat. And there it is. It should slide through, but not too easily because you don't want your button to come unbuttoned by itself, but it should be not so snug that you can't button it easily. So that made a wonderful buttonhole. Again, you can make it a little bit denser if you want to try that again. To make it shorter, just simply don't cut it all the way to the end. To make it longer, you can actually lengthen this distance and make it so that it fits a little bit looser in there. And the reason why you might want to do those things is it depends on what kind of garment you're sewing the buttonhole on. Maybe you're sewing it on a thick coat that has a liner and an inner liner, and it's really thick, and you might want that buttonhole a little bit longer. Or maybe you have a thick, chunky button that's got to get through that. Again, always practice, make a sample buttonhole on the type of fabric with the type of interfacing that you're going to be using before you actually sew it on your garment. So, and remember, any marks that show, you can take your iron and iron off the marks from the friction pen. So I hope this video has been helpful to you. If it has, give us a thumbs up. And if you have comments or questions, you can leave those in the area down below. We have lots of other videos on this machine and on other machines here on our Montavilla Sewing Center YouTube channel. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Bye.